2020 election. Before we begin, I'd like to remind voters that absentee voting has already started, and we encourage anyone who has questions regarding when or where to vote to contact the Sheridan County Elections Office. And as usual, polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on November 3rd. With me here tonight is Sheridan Press journalist Brian Hanrahan, and our timer, Sheridan Press editor Ashley Snoozy. She's down in front. We'd like to thank all of the staff here at the YO Performing Arts and Education Center for
to ask a question of his opponent. Then, the candidate originally asked the question will have 2 minutes to respond. Finally, we'll end the evening with 2-minute closing statements from each candidate.
And just a reminder, candidates, Ashley down in front will give you a 30-second warning, and then she'll sound the timer, which will be your cue to finish your thought, and we will cut you off if you go much over the 2 minutes. So just fair warning, we will cut you off, okay? We're planning on about an hour-long debate, so let's begin. With the order determined by a coin toss with the candidates prior to the event, Roger, please start with your opening statement.
Thank you. Hello, Sheridan. I'm Roger Miller, and I'm asking for your vote November 3rd. This election season's been a very interesting year with COVID kind of really changing a lot of what we've had to do for the last months. Getting out and getting our information out to all of the residents has been a bit interrupted and hard to get done. So people have asked me for the past few months, why didn't you try to run in the first part of the election, during the primary? The answer is basically that it didn't matter. And it also just really boils out to be a waste of money and people's time. So I chose to make sure that I do a really good campaign at this point, get as much information out to the people as much as I can at this time so that we can really focus on what's important to the community of the city of Sheridan, our residents, and make sure that we have a good open debate. We don't waste any money. One of my things that I've done for the last 4 years is I've worked very hard to make sure that we have a good fiscal responsibility. We've put together some very nice budgets. For the first time, really, in the history of Sheridan, we've made sure that our budgets have been online for everybody to look at on our city websites. We've done much more transparency aspects and much more accountability aspects over the last 4 years than we've seen in the recent past. Some of the current things that we are working on here in the city of Sheridan, we're still currently working on the 1135 Goose Creek project. It's something I've been working on for the last 4 years. It was started quite some time ago. We have the Downtown Riverwalk project. We got the East 5th Corridor project. We have the hillside stabilization, all great things which we've been able to accomplish. The list goes on and on of all the great things that we've been able to do over the last 4 years. And I'm Roger Miller, asking for your vote on November 3rd. And I look forward to this debate and getting out as much information to our community as possible.
Mr. Bridger, go for it.
Well, good evening, everyone. A little about myself. I graduated from Sheridan High. I have 2 associate's degrees from Sheridan College and a bachelor's from the University of Wyoming. I'm the business manager for the Sheridan Recreation District and have been for many years. Working for the district, it was also as a necessity that I learned to officiate. So I've officiated from junior high or grade school, actually, all the way through college. I've been married to my wife, Pam, for 34 years. I have one daughter, Becky, who just graduated Sheridan College and is a member of the Wyoming National Guard. I served on school board for 12 years and was honored to be a Wyoming School Board Member of the Year in 2009. However, after 12 years and my daughter's graduation, I decided it was somebody else's turn, and it was at that point I decided to run for council, and I've served accordingly. My platform as mayor is fairly straightforward. I intend to focus on 3 priorities: leadership, jobs, and quality of life. Leadership. First, I intend to be a good listener and a servant leader. I don't believe I have all the answers, and I need to work with people to come up with the best solutions. I intend to emphasize cooperation and collaboration and not confrontation. And finally, I know that the decisions made today are important of a much larger puzzle, and thus I need to govern wisely and make fiscally responsible decisions. Jobs. I will be a promoter of what Sheridan has to offer at the state and local level and continue to work with groups such as CETA to attract new businesses. I will be a strong supporter of college tech programs and education in general, and I will work with such groups as the Chamber and DSA to be an active partner. And finally, quality of life. I will make infrastructure and streets a priority. I will support senior citizens programs in the hub and I will continue to support law enforcement, firefighters, and ambulance services which keep our community safe. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to the question portion. Mayor Miller, the first question will begin with you. Outside of elected office, in what ways have you served the Sheridan community?
So in my recent past, I ran the fly shop at the Bighorns on Main Street as a business owner operating up and down Main Street. I worked as the president and vice president of the Trout Unlimited Group for over a decade here in our community. We worked on our creeks and our environment around our area, the fishing in our community and up in the mountains. I spent much time working with my family and running a business. That takes a lot of time. Business owners on Main Street know that it's a full-time job. You work 24/7, 365, and that does leave a lot of time to spend with my family, which I find very important to me. So I've spent the last since 2002. When I moved back to town, I had my first business in property inspections, home inspections. I was a police officer, detective before that. I ran my business at Fly Shop the Bighorns on Main Street for over a decade, and then I ran for mayor. So not a whole lot of time to really get out and do a million different things. But I did attend community meetings on all kinds of different aspects, followed our city council, especially on different aspects in reference to different ordinances, sign ordinances, the different liquor ordinance changes that we had to work through from different times in the past, but also just community development and community building. So I've spent most of my time, the last basically 18 years here in Sheridan, working hard, raising my family, and trying to make sure that we do what I could do what I could for the city of Sheridan and for the people of Sheridan through the different organizations and public input in all the different groups that we were looking at for the last 10 years, or 20 years.
Mr. Bridger, your response?
Please say the question again just so I get it right.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Outside of elected office, in what ways have you served the Sheridan community?
That goes way back. I've always been pretty active with the city of Sheridan and the Sheridan community. I suppose the biggest thing I did was I was on school board for 12 years, and I was a school board president for a few of those years as well. And like I said, then I was noted as being a school board member of the year in 2009. But leaving school board aside, as far as other things in education, I've always volunteered in classrooms. I've volunteered in classrooms for 12, 14 years, first grade mostly. I've always helped with events such as track meets and those sort of things. I've always been willing to pitch in. As far as away from education, I've served on groups such as the Sheridan Park Advisory Committee, the North Main Neighborhood Association, and other groups locally. But then statewide, I was part of the Wyoming Judicial Nominating Commission, and I was the president of the Wyoming Recreation and Parks Association. And then moving a little farther out, I was the chair for the Midwest region of the National Recreation and Parks Association. So it's been pretty numerous, and I know I'm forgetting a lot of groups that I've been in part of, but I've always believed in community service, and I've always stressed that, not only with me, but with my family and my daughter. And so I think it's important that you step up, you be a part of your community, you pitch in where you can, and you help out where you can. And so I've always lived by that motto, and that's about it. I've always volunteered.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, a 2-minute rebuttal if you'd like.
Only rebuttal I would say is, I also spent time with the Catholic Church. I was a Knights of Columbus since about 2002, where we do all kinds of public service and assistance to the community, especially through our church, any kind of religious aspects that help raise funds for many different travels and small children through school. When I had my business, I actually did a lot of donations and helped with the baseball teams and other aspects and the sporting events across town. To be that good business leader that was downtown on Main Street and supporting as much as I could afford to support for all these years. Joey's Fly Fishing Foundation, the list goes on and on.
Okay, our next question will start with you, Councilor Bridger. What do you believe will be the city's biggest challenge over the coming 4 years, And how do you plan to address that challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is everything that's going to happen at the state level. We get something called a direct distribution every year, which is a little over $1 million. And we use that money for projects around town, and we've gotten kind of used to having those funds available for those projects. And I got a feeling with the decline in the mineral industries and the state troubles that we're going to see, those are going to diminish, and I think those revenues are going to potentially go away, although I don't know that for a fact. So I think we're going to have to learn to live lean and mean, and really prioritize what projects we will or will not do. And then we'll have to get laser in on our budgets to make sure that we stay within our budgets and we're fiscally responsible. And then finally, I just think that as a whole, we need to continue down the path that we're on and not shirk from it. So even though budgets may get tighter, we got to still look at things like our creek restorations and our business park and those things that are being potentially benefit for our community, and not shirk from them and remain steadfast and realize that it might be a new paradigm, that we got to adjust to some budget cuts and we got to adjust to a new way of doing business, but that we still do business. And we remain optimistic about the future, and we still get things done.
Mayor Miller, your 2 minutes.
So I agree. The budget coming up is going to be our major issue. The distribution funding, the supplemental, is about $1.7 million out of our budget. If that does disappear in the next biennium, that's going to be over $3.4 million out of the budget for the next 2 years. That will be very, very substantial. So we're going to have to look at that point. When we talked about our budget back in May, our interim city administrator, Mike Jackson, told us, and our leaving administrator said, our budget is not sustainable to continue to do raises at the rate that we're doing them at. It's important to give raises to our staff and try to pay where we can, but we definitely need to look at that amount of money of increase. When we have 13% increases that come in on our insurance, that's a huge increase, over 180 employees. So our staff is going to be something we have to look at. If we have this $1.7 million cut, well, actually, that's a biennium, or that's each year over the biennium. So if we have that cut, we're definitely going to have to look at some kind of staff reductions. As I said, the mayor is a perfect position to be running our city. Back in 2016, we had $166,000 for administration with the mayor and city council. Currently, we have $407,000 worth of administrator, city mayor, and city council to administer our city. So there are areas that we have recently implemented that we can save a good $200,000 to $250,000, $300,000 off of the budget in a very quick, easy way, which helps us keep more of our staff to do a lot more of the work that is much more needed for our community. But our budget as a whole is going to be very important. The state legislature has got to look at that and make sure that we stay on track for the major decreases they're going to do. And we'll just make sure that we continue to do great budgeting for the city of Sheridan like we've done the last 4 years.
Thank you, Mayor Miller. Councilor Bridger, a 2-minute rebuttal.
Well, my 2-minute rebuttal would be twofold. First, in regards to raises in budgets this last fiscal season or this last year, it was Mike Jackson who recommended a modest raise for our employees, as well as an increase in the percentage that they paid for their health insurance. So, and I was okay with that, and we'd done the homework on that, and we could afford to do that. And our numbers still show that we could afford to do that. But at that time, I got outvoted, and so we didn't give the employees their modest raise, but we did take more out of their health insurance, which still is a point of angst for me, because I didn't think it was necessary, and right now I think I'm being proven right. And it was that city administrator, Mike Jackson, that did the work on that recommended that, so it wasn't a huge increase in pay. As far as the other thing that we can save all this money with administrative positions, I can only think that he's referring to the city administrator, although I'd have to get clarification from him, but that's been a point of contention for the mayor for 4 years now, and it sounds like we're back down that road, and it's kind of, in the immortal words of Ronald Reagan, there you go again. So we're at 4 years of this, 2 councils, thousands of dollars in legal fees, thousands for a council handbook, thousands for a special election, and now, unless I'm wrong, it sounds like we're back at it. Thanks.
Thank you. The city's sales and use tax revenues continue to trend upward, in part due to online sales through marketplaces like Amazon. What role, if any, should city government play in supporting local businesses? Mayor Miller, please respond.
I thought it was for him. Could you repeat that again?
Certainly. The city's sales and use tax revenues continue to trend upward, in part due to online sales through marketplaces like Amazon. What role, if any, should city government play in supporting local businesses?
The role that we play in supporting local businesses is that we definitely support our local businesses. That's what we've been doing for a long time in Sheridan. There was a support your local business campaign for the last decade, and we absolutely continue to do that. Our local businesses are our lifeblood for our community. It's what keeps us working together and bringing us together on our downtown Main Street and across our city. We need to make sure that as we move forward over the next 4 years is that we do stay focused on our local businesses. And the sales and use tax has been trending up. It's been a very good thing for us. And the conservative nature that we tried to implement at the beginning of the year in May was that we didn't know where our sales tax would be for the next 6 months or a year. We've been very lucky. We're one of 3 communities across the state that haven't been massively down. That's very important for us to know. We've been the #1 community across the state with our sales and use tax and our internet tax to keep us up at a decent level for the last 5 months. We do expect that this will continue on. We do expect to come back, if that stays high, to issue the raises that we talked about back in May with our city administrator. And at that same time, in the budget, the city administrator said, now, if you aren't fulfilling all your duties. We have an ordinance that basically says we're supposed to be putting money into reserves. We haven't been keeping up with that. We're supposed to hit a 50% reserve aspect. We have other areas, and we asked the question at the time, if we don't have the supplemental funding coming forward, what's going to be the major area that we're going to have to focus on? And he flat out said, it's jobs. It'll be staff. And so we have to look at the staff and say, where are we going to be at with this staff? Are we going to not have more people in streets? We're going to do away with people at the landfill. We're going to do people with the police department, our fire department, so minimal. That's not a place I think we can cut anymore. It's going to be something we have to grow. So we're going to have to look at our budget very closely.
Thank you.
If that money.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger, your response.
I'm kind of nervous, so repeat the question again.
Certainly.
Please.
The city's sales and use tax revenues continue to trend upward, in part due to online sales through marketplaces like Amazon. What role, if any, should city government play in supporting local business?
Well, direct support obviously is to buy local, and we do have purchasing agreements or policies that we do buy local. The other thing we can do is work with our community partners that represent the local merchants. We can be a strong partner with the Downtown Sheridan Association. We can be a strong partner with the Sheridan Chamber. And all those things help promote a sense of Sheridan. I go back that we have a beautiful Main Street. We have some great folks downtown that are merchants here, and that we need to support those people. And that's the message that I always preach, is that we need to support those people. And I think as a council, we've said that we need to support our local merchants. That internet tax is a nice thing, but it doesn't do much for that local flavor. And so, again, I don't know what else to say other than we need to focus on buying local as a government, and we need to be a good partner with those entities that are part of that group, which is the DSA, and the Sheridan Chamber. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, your rebuttal.
So that's exactly what we do in Sheridan. We've been doing it for a decade, so nothing's going to change there. We're definitely going to be working with our businesses. I walk up and down Main Street. I've talked with almost every business up and down Main Street for the last 4 years. Doing little things like our 3-lane configuration would be a great benefit to our community. It makes downtown quieter, safer. 95+% of the businesses were in favor of doing the test. We did the test. The community came back with the surveys. About 73% said they also liked the change. And so fortunately, unfortunately, some of the budget was reduced back in May to limit the cost of doing the 3-lane interchange or the 3-lane configuration on Main Street. But it looks like here in the next few weeks we might actually be able to do that 3-lane configuration. YDOT's really stepped up. Scott from the Wyoming Department of Highway Department is ready to make sure that does go into fruition here in the next hopefully less than 30 days. So there are a lot of little things we can do, infrastructure, the water line, the streets, just promoting our DSA in our chamber, which we do all the time, and continuing to grow our local businesses on our main streets, on our north end, which we've done with Vacutech and Kennan and Weatherby, and on our south end with our other businesses that are coming into town. We recently had another business. This is great news for our COVID area, or our COVID time. Another business has decided recently in the last week to move to Sheridan, move a few jobs. It's like 5 or so jobs to our community, light manufacturing, sales. But that's what we've been doing the last 4 years is our economic development. We've been doing a great job. And even in the hardest time of America right now, we're still growing with our job development and our shopping and our businesses downtown.
Okay, Mr. Bridger, our next question will start with you. Do you support the capital facilities tax? If not, why not? And if so, what project should be the city's top priority?
That's a tough one for me. I mean, I flat out do support the capital facilities tax because it gets a lot of good for our community. And I always tell people that the capital facilities tax is not a new tax. It's a tax that we've been paying quite a few years now. We have a list of priorities or projects that we want to see fulfilled on that list. In fact, we just recreated that list for this next November election, and I, for one, plan to vote in favor of the capital facilities tax, but I only speak for myself. But I see the good that comes of it, and I see the good work that we've done because of it. The reason that's kind of a weird one for me is one of those projects on that capital facilities tax is the Kennard Park pool. And so I work for the Sheridan Recreation District, and we operate the Kennard Park pool. But even the Kennard Park pool would not be my priority, although I think it's a wonderful project, and I think it's one that deserves to be looked at. I always think that if you're going to use that CAPS tax, the first thing that you should look at is roads, streets, utilities, those things that everybody uses that are so important to the infrastructure of our community. And so my priority on the CAP tax is to prioritize those sort of projects that do the most benefit for the most good in our community, and then work down that list accordingly with the projects that the voters have agreed to and that the voters approve of, and make the most good out of those dollars that are given to us. Thank you.
Mayor Miller?
Absolutely. There's only a couple of taxes that I don't mind paying, and it's the taxes that go right here to our community and our county. So the cap tax and the 1 cent tax, I support those every time. They are about $3.2 to $3.6 million per year. The two together, you're talking $6 to $7 million of work that we can do in our community with our local groups like DSA and Chamber and the Hub and all the different groups that receive anywhere between $600,000 and $900,000 of the 1 cent funding. But the cap tax does definitely go to all of our infrastructure projects, our water lines, our sewer lines, our roadways, our curbs and gutters. Those types of things are what we absolutely need that funding for. If you go back to the 80s, 1989 was when the the 1 cent tax was passed. I think about that same time was our cap tax that also passed. And you can look, if you've been here long enough, like we have. I moved here as a 9-year-old kid in 1979, but we have seen great growth of our community, our infrastructure, our roadways. We had dirt roads up off of kind of the neighborhood I lived in, over by Omar and that kind of area, Taylor. But those areas are now paved, and that's part of what that does. It puts sidewalks for kids not to have to roller skate and be out in the streets and walk into school. They can be on sidewalks. Is there a lot more we have to do? Absolutely. There's $1 billion worth of sidewalks probably in the state or in the city, plus our infrastructure that we absolutely need to continue to work on. So I support the cap tax. I think the projects that we are focused on in our cap tax and our CIP plan for the next 4 to 6 years are very good projects. We've talked about it as council for the last few years, and we're ready to continue to implement those things. That's why working a good budget and working a good CIP plan, so you budget out years in advance, is extremely important, and that's what we do while I've been mayor, and that's what we'll do in the future.
Thank you, Mayor Miller. Councilor Bridger, any 2-minute response?
Oh, there's not too much to respond to. I think we're generally in agreement to this. I just think that the capital facilities tax does a lot of good for this community, and it goes right back into the community. So that's the thing that you have to keep in mind, is that every penny that we put back into that cap tax goes right back into our community, and it all rolls over in the community as far as jobs, as far as products bought, as far as all those sort of things that keep our economy vital. And so not only does it help create those projects, but it helps create jobs, it helps create an economy, and it's very important, and again, I support it.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, this next question will begin with you. How can the city better prepare itself and its processes for continuing growth and avoid future situations like the Hidden Bridge Ranch development that has dragged on for months?
That's a great question, and we're actually working on those things right now. Some of the things that we're doing right now is we're trying to, part of the problem was this. There was a lot of turnover in the city, so a lot of local in-house knowledge was lost. There was contracts that we haven't seen. Most of us hadn't seen those things. They were signed by Mayor Kinski back in 2013. Some of them were in the homeowners group had certain contracts. Don Roberts had certain contracts. There was a lot of information that we just don't have and have a good collection of history. So what we've been trying to do is we're trying to get a new accounting system. Hasn't been updated since 1993 or 7. It's been a long time. Records keeping aspect. We have a new city clerk, Cecilia Good, who's doing a great job making sure that our records are kept better. Those records need to be kept in each individual department. Lane Thompson, our public community development director's office, those are where you keep those records to make sure that we're not getting fallen behind and we can't work together because we don't know the information we need to work on. So our staff is working very hard to correct those issues. For the last 5 months, effectively, this Hidden Bridge thing has dragged out. It's a lot of misinformation from the neighborhood up there. We've corrected and we've worked on this from a PUD from 90 homes to 80 plus homes to 74 homes. The zoning aspect is what we're currently looking at, and there's no reason that we shouldn't pass the zoning aspect on this going forward because it's part of the process. That process has to continue to grow. We're continuing to develop that process, and we need to make sure that as we look at the larger plats, like this one was platted out somewhere around 213, and there are multiple phases of it. There's at least 3 different phases. We have to be able to look at that and start to plan this phase, the second phase, third phase, without holding and bankrupting your contractors and your landowners and your developers in this process. It's a big thing that we absolutely have to continue to get better at, and we are currently working on resolving those issues.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger, your response?
One more time, repeat the question.
Certainly. How can the city better prepare itself and its processes for continuing growth and avoid future situations like the Hidden Bridge Ranch development that has dragged on for months?
Well, I do think that part of that is staff turnover. And so there's been a lot of people, and this has been a very long process with that whole subdivision area. And it started way back with Mayor Kinski, and probably even before that, I'm not sure. So there's layers upon layers upon layers of agreements that have been made over the years. And so staff doesn't know all that, and they're accumulating that information as we speak. And then the zoning on it, it was zoned R1B1, and so originally. And so that needed to be changed, and the contractor wanted to change it to an R2. And he's tried to work with the HOA group over there, which is another thing. You got an HOA group involved with that. And so there's been just a series of arguments and dialogue back and forth, that whole thing. But I think the main thing with that whole development is we need to take a fresh look at it. We need to combine all those documents that we have that have been created over the years. We need to create one concise, precise document that lays out what we're going to do, and then we need to do it. I mean, and then we're using stuff that comes in 3 phases, and they made agreements for phase 1, but now they're trying to transfer those phase 1 agreements over to the phase 2 and the phase 2 to phase 3 when they were created for that first phase. So it really just involves a lot of cleaning up of documents and communication. And I don't think we're that far off. I do feel bad for the developer. I do think we need to move on it and get going so he can get going. But it's all doable. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, any rebuttal?
So I would only just add to it that the communication between the HOA, the land developer, the builder, and the city is a lot of different directions, a lot of different contracts that go in different responsibilities that the city does not have any accountability for or able to work on certain aspects. When there's an agreement between the HOA and an agreement between Don Roberts, and then another agreement between the HOA and the developer, and then another one between the developer and Don Roberts, those aren't things that the city knows. We don't have those agreements. We don't have those discussions. So when those things are happening, we're trying to be basically the mediator in the middle and saying, well, how can we work through the process and make sure that we're getting the best product for our community? That's what we're working for, is a good housing product. Originally, that was being looked at to try to be a PUD where you'd have some affordable or more affordable housing up there. But at this time, once you take 25 lots off, you've basically removed about $2.5 million out of the project, and now you have your developer that's going to have to try to do his work on 74 lots, and those lots are actually very, very close to the R1 standard, which that community is looking for. The pathways, the sidewalks, the lighting, all those things come later. And we're going to work out those issues. And so, we both, Bridger and I, have been threatened with votes in the election. If you don't vote our way, we're not going to vote for you. Well, that's not something that we can actually take into account. I definitely don't get persuaded by the public threatening to not vote for me when I'm doing the right thing for the community, and we're working hard to make sure that we are going to do the right thing for the community. The follow-up with this is several more phases and more agreements that are going to have to be made. And the sooner we work on those things, the sooner we outline that in more detail, the better that will be for our community in the long run.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger, we'll start with you for this question. Which area of city government do you feel is most underfunded? And do you feel there are any areas that are overfunded?
Wow, that's a tough one. Obviously, if I have my druthers, I'm always into infrastructure and roads. So if there was some way that we could increase budget for those sort of things, I always think that's a good idea. I'm always good for those nice to haves when we can afford those for our community. So I like to keep working on our parks and our pathways. I think those are nice amenities. But when it comes down to it, it's about nuts and bolts and getting things done within the city. So that's where I think I put the stress for most of my money. As far as overfunded, I personally don't think so. We're running pretty lean and mean. We cut our budget by 9%. Just this fiscal budget. We're running with the right amount of people. We could get rid of a few people in some departments, but generally we're pretty close to where we need to be to function as a proper government. So there's always these little things you can do, but big things I don't think that rise out of this time. We don't need to make those commitments where we're ready to slash and burn or get rid of departments or lay off huge amounts of people because we don't need to do that. And we just need to always keep looking at our budgets with a fresh eye and deal with things as they come up. So thank you.
Mayor Miller?
So I don't think that we're over or under budget in any of the given departments. There's always places that you can squeeze a little bit more here and need to add a little bit more there. Our Parks Department, according to our master plan we just did, is at least 3 people less than we need. Our police department is rated for about 30 officers, where we haven't had, I think, 30 officers for the last 4 years, so we're not filling a full staff. Our firefighters are at minimum staffing and minimum dollars, so where can you go from there? Same with our landfill, our waters, our utilities, our engineering. We're doing the best we can with the budget we have. If you go online and read the budget, this last one is as clean and easy to understand as it possibly can be. So I don't think that we're over budget anywhere. I don't think we're under budget anywhere. If we had more money, we could do a lot more infrastructure, a lot more projects. If the community wanted to look at that 7th cent out in the future, maybe that would be something that we could add and do more infrastructure work with. That wouldn't be necessarily a bad idea, but it would be up to the community and the voters to say, yeah, we want to see more roads and sidewalks and curbs and gutters and water and sewer line extensions. We definitely have to start monitoring and paying attention very closely over the next, probably 10 to 15 years about our water treatment facility on the north end of town. We only have about 2,500, maybe 3,000 water taps left before that capacity is full. And with the growth and the expansion on the north end of town, with the potential of another 800 households out there, that's going to fill up very quickly, and that will be a very multi-million-dollar project, $10, $20, $30 million for that particular upgrade. And so that's something we have to start planning now for that future issue.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger, any 2-minute rebuttal?
Generally, I agree with everything Roger says. I think with all of this, you just need to look at it with fresh eyes. You can't just do business as usual. And so you got to kind of roll with the punches, relook at your budget every year, decide what you can and can't do, prioritize your needs, and budget accordingly. And if you come to the point where some things have to be let go or not done that year, you need to weigh those carefully. And then you need to figure that you can't do those this year and that you need to budget accordingly for the next year. I'm not a doom and gloom type guy, so I always am the optimistic person that thinks we can find a way. I don't see where we can't find a way. We have a great diversified economy in this community. I don't see it going away anytime soon. We have a great staff. I'm very happy with our staff in general. I think they do a great job and they come to work ready to work. And no, I just think it's looking at everything with fresh eyes, realizing what the climate is at that time, and adjusting your budget to suit and make it work.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, we'll start this question with you. If elected, how do you plan to work together with the city administrator to effectively run the city?
So the last 4 years, I've had to try 4 different ways, because we've had 2 interims and 2 permanent administrators. So I think I can work with them, and I have proven that the last 4 years. It really is a philosophy understanding, and it's a budget understanding of whether we need it or don't need it. We've voted on it on 2202, so the community has moved past that at this point. But the fact is if our money drops so much, we have to look at cuts. There are certain cuts that we can do much easier, much quicker, and much more cost-effective than others. And that would be one of the positions that I would look at. Now, as a full-time mayor, trying to be out and being down at the legislature, paying attention to what everything's going on across the state, helping, watching what's going on in our other municipalities, the different laws that are changing, potential RUC, the road transportation tax that the state's looking at right now, more liquor ordinance changes that they're looking at now, or state law changes. A mayor has to be able to work through those things and understand them and spend that time. A full-time mayor is what I plan on doing again for the next 4 years. I plan on working with the current administrator. I helped hire him. He was my #1 choice as far as an administrator goes. I think he's got great integrity. He works hard. And I've tried to help out with the budget in the past couple years. This last budget, the one that we just did, that everyone says that our city administrator did the whole thing, but he and I actually we attended 30 different meetings together. We talked about the budget. We worked through that budget. He worked with me very good on making sure we have a great budget with all the right information in it. I plan on doing the same thing with our current administrator, if he'll let me. I've asked for that, and some council members don't think that that's necessary. I disagree. I think the mayor should be actively involved in all those parts, because you have your staff part of putting a budget together, and you have your public, elected public part of putting together a budget, and those two things have to work together.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger?
One more time.
If elected, how do you plan to work together with the city administrator to effectively run the city?
Well, I don't think I'll have a problem with that, honestly, and I've talked to the new city administrator, and I've mentioned the fact that the first time, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, I want to sit down with him and work out a working arrangement that we can both live with. I think it's, again, it's about cooperation, it's about collaboration, it's about having an open dialogue, it's about not having an ego, and I don't think I'll have a problem working with the city administrator, because I believe I'm going to let the city administrator do what the city administrator is supposed to do, which handle the day-to-day details of operating the city, and I'm supposed to be doing higher functions than that. As far as preparing the budgets, I think that's fine that I sit in on the budgets, those sort of things, to make sure everything flows well, and then make sure that I relay all those things to my fellow council members so they can be kept in the loop. But as far as working with the city administrator, I really don't have a problem with that. In fact, I look forward to it, and I think with the right attitude, we'll have a great team and we'll get a lot of things done.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, your rebuttal?
So, as we've proven the last 4 years that that can be done, it's easy to do. Like I said, I've worked with 4 administrators over the past 3.5 years, and the results are out there. The city is running great. We've done great things. We've got a lot of great projects. When you look at the Hillslide projects, you look at the Goose Creek 1135 projects, all of that is that higher level stuff that that Rich is referring to, but it's also working down at the state legislature, standing up and testifying regularly at the state legislature on behalf of the citizens and the residents of the city of Sheridan. I work with the WAM, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, as an elected board member. That's something as well that the mayor should be doing, and try to get elected to that board so that he can go out and make sure that we're getting the best that we can for our community all year round, and a full-time job. Our assistant, Bev, she works a full-time job trying to help 6 council members and the mayor get all of the stuff that we have to accomplish every week done. She works extremely hard. She works probably 10 to plus hours or more of overtime every week. And so there's a lot of areas that there's plenty of work to do, full-time job, and I would be that full-time mayor and make sure that we get the job done that I've proven we've done the last 4 years. If you look at Sheridan today from 4 years ago, we are far better off. We have over 200 more jobs in our community, high-paying jobs. We have Weatherby that's moved to town. We have economic development. We have housing aspects going on. We got infrastructure going on. It's exactly what the people asked me to do: bring accountability, bring transparency, and bring good leadership to the mayor's office. And that's exactly what I've done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger, we'll start with you for this question. What are your goals for the development of the North Main area?
Well, that's pretty easy. One, I want to see that subdivision be developed out there. I think it has a promise. I believe that it's a beautiful area and it can be developed and developed well. As far as the current park that we have there, I believe that we're almost out of lots there. We have filled it up when nobody thought we would. At the time it was created, everybody was dubious and didn't think that it would go anywhere. Well, guess what? It went very well. And so I think we're down to like 1 or 2 lots out there that we can develop as far as economic development. So one, I would like to see an expansion of that current park. And if I can't expand it there, then I would look to expand it somewhere else with that same philosophy that if you build it, they will come. And that's probably the big thing that I see with North Main is one. Oh, and then also off track, if we can get some people out there and we can get residents out there and we sell some more properties out there, eventually I would like to see that the North Main area built up, and then we get something of a grocery store out there and some other businesses that revitalize that whole north end. I mean, it's come a long way from what it once was, but I think it has a long way to go, and I think it has the potential to go much, much farther. And so I'm really excited about the possibilities out there. I think they're endless. And if left up to me, then I'll just continue to work that North Main. I'll continue to try to build that business park. I'll continue to work with those people to build residents out there, and I'll continue to work to try to attract new business to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Miller?
So a little correction, the lots out there on the north end business park are all actually taken account for. Weatherby has rights to one of the lots, the Kennan has the rights to another lot, and Vacutech still has access to that lot that we unfortunately lost. That was the first funding that I went down to the state of Cheyenne, or down to Cheyenne with, and the state approved money to help expand the Vacutech building. A series of unfortunate circumstances put a delay in it, and then that delay landed right at the beginning of COVID. We had everything lined out, 100% ready to go on that project. COVID hits, and the company, the mother company that bought Vacutech as a global aspect, decided to pull back on that project. So we had to release those funds, but that property is still basically there for Vacutech to move forward with. As far as new properties, we've been looking for the last couple years, actually, trying to look at that next phase 2 business park out on the north end. And we need to determine, and we're actually having a CETA meeting here this week in reference to trying to determine what is CETA, the Sheridan Sheridan Education Economic Development Authority, which has brought all that stuff in, which I've been the chair and vice chair of for the last 4 years, bringing those types of groups to our community and improving the job quality, the dollar amount of those jobs, and the growth of our community. We do have to look at that next. One of the things that I actually brought up for the $12 million aspect with Weatherby out there, I brought up an idea that no one had ever thought of before, and I said, well, what if instead of having the state get paid back all that money, would the state be willing to allow $6 million of that dollars, when it gets paid back, to stay here in Sheridan so we could use that for our next project? We ran that process through the state. The state came back and said, well, that's a great idea. We're gonna do that. We're gonna allow the city of Sheridan or the CETA group to be able to retain $6 million and reinvest in our community. That's the kind of leadership I bring, and I bring great innovative ideas that do good things for.
Councilor Bridger, any rebuttal?
Well, what the mayor fails to say is that I'm a member of CETA as well. And so that we've worked diligently, and Robert Briggs, who's the director of CETA, has done a fantastic job leading that group and helping us through all the problems and the state regulations, and going down to the state to find monies to facilitate all those projects that we've accomplished. And I just think that there's more accomplishments that can be had out there. And I think that we're not there. We're not done yet. And so like I said, I'm an optimistic person. I'm optimistic that we're going to keep doing wonderful things out there. If we can't do it out there, we can find another suitable spot to build another business park and do it all over again. And I have confidence that we can get that done as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Miller, we'll start with you for our final question of the night. You've both talked tonight about turnover in city government. What do you believe is causing that, and how can you as mayor reduce that turnover?
So cities always have turnover. Jobs always have turnover. Part of it is the pay aspect. You know, some of the people on the lower end of the scale can't afford. We recently had a city employee leave the city because they couldn't afford the housing in our community. So that's one of the many issues that we're trying to work on. You know, not everybody can afford or needs a house that's a 8,000 plus square foot lot and a 300 plus thousand home. We need to make sure that as we work forward in our housing, that we're making sure we see more R4 development, R3 development, and R2 development on smaller lots with duplexes, fourplexes, apartment complexes. Out on the north end of town, one of the businesses that moved a business out there has a great location for a lot that could be some more low-income housing. That would be a great location on the north end of town and be very center to all the jobs that are on that north end of town. That's something that I have been working with those people for the last few years. Keeping that continuous voice, working with the same people is very important. Switching, mayors and council members out every couple of years isn't good for our community. We all agree that long-term, well, not super long-term, we don't want to see 48 years worth of government, but we do want to see a good 8 to 12 years of people working hard to do the best for our community. That's the stuff that I have been doing. That's the stuff that I will continue to do for the city of Sheridan.
Thank you. Councilor Bridger?
Well, there's a couple things there. First, some of the departments are hard to fill as far as they're just tough jobs, such as the police department. The police department's always seems to be short a few people because it's a hard job. On contrary, the fire department, they do very well, and they have a good retention program, and they've kept all their employees. Housing is part of that. It's hard to find a median priced house in this community, and so that is obviously a problem that needs to be worked at. And there's projects coming up like the Cottonwood project that are addressing some of those needs, but they need to continue to be addressed. I think we need to always recognize our employees and appreciate the employees we have. But that being said, it is a large force or large employee number, and so you are naturally always going to have some turnover involved with a large business like the one that we have. And so it's a complex situation, but I think as far as pay and those sort of things, we need to continue to look at that and see what we can and can't afford, try to stay competitive with the private market, which sometimes isn't always that easy, and offer whatever benefits we can to entice people to stay. And again, just recognize and appreciate the employees that we have and not be afraid to throw an attaboy at them every once in a while and recognize their good work.
Mayor Miller?
Rebuttal on that?
Yep.
So exactly what we've been doing. We've done a lot of great jobs with that. We try to make sure that we tell our employees that they're doing a great job. We try to make sure the last few years that we try to catch up where we can with the increase of funds. When you put together raises based off of tax revenues that aren't necessarily really solid, and you start reaching beyond your budget limits, you really got to start being careful as a government. The staff basically, at the low end, does need to have a little bit higher pay, but we just don't have a massive amount of money. We don't have, if you look back over the last 30 years, our increase of our general fund and our utilities funds, which is about 60% out of or 40% out of the utility funds is part of our staff, 60% out of the general fund. When you look at those numbers, we've increased only few $1 million over 30 years. And when you do raises over the last 4 years of about $1.3 million, you can see that gets eaten up really fast if you stay on that track. So we just have to do a much better job, or continue to do actually a great job of what we've done the last 4 years, and make sure that we're working on our budget. We're being very conscientious of that budget. We work with our staff. We try to work with that long-term staff as well. We've had people that have been with the city 30 and 40 plus years. Those people are at the higher end of the pay scale. When those people retire, we can actually hire someone at the little bit lower end of the pay scale and start to bring them up and have another great long-term employee for the future. So there's many great things that we can do. We'll continue to do those great things. Sheridan is a great place to live. We all know that. And when I look back over the last 4 years, I see great improvement, and that's what I want to continue to do for Sheridan.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our closing statements. Each candidate will have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute statement, and we'll begin with the opposite order as we did for the opening statement. So, Councilor Bridger, that means you go first.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for hosting this tonight. Especially, I'd like to thank the Sheridan Press for their great work and the YO Theater for the hosting. I'd like to thank the few people in the audience that showed up today, and especially my friends and colleagues that showed up to support me. I truly appreciate you guys. I think that for the next few years, you're going to see a challenge for the whole entire state and for the city of Sheridan. I'm sure that everyone here knows the fiscal challenges that the state is facing and declines in the mineral industry. That as a state, there will have to be hard decisions made regarding revenues, expenses, and monies available at the state level for local projects. But I don't think it's time for despair, and I don't think it's time to be frozen with indecisiveness regarding our future. I personally think that Sheridan can and will move forward because of our current economic diversification. Additionally, Sheridan is a nice place to live. The abundance of natural beauty of which we are blessed make our community a nice place to call home. Our educational system, from elementary to college, is top quality and teaches skills that are in high demand. Sheridan is also blessed with a wonderful downtown and a solid workforce. Thus, I don't believe it is a time for despair, but a time to look forward with cautious optimism. I have a wide range of experience in community involvement in the city of Sheridan. I have realistic goals for keeping Sheridan traditionally unique while creating an environment that encourages the growth of business and jobs. And as a business manager for the district, I have 27 years of knowing how to put a budget together through good times and bad. As a parent, school board member, and volunteer in schools, I know the importance of our educational system. As a son of a highway patrolman, I know the value of keeping our community safe. As a longtime resident, I know I realize the importance of supporting our senior citizens. And as a taxpayer, I know the value of fiscal responsibility and fiscal discipline. So my name is Rich Bridger. I'm running for mayor, and I would appreciate your vote, and thank you again.
Thank you, Councilor Bridger. Mayor Miller?
Well, again, I'm Roger Miller. I'm married to Dr. Jill Miller at the Sheridan Eye Care Center. We have 3 wonderful kids, and one of them's off at the University of Wyoming right now, one of them's at the junior high, and one of them is at the high school. Family, I've grown up in Sheridan since 1979. I lived in the county, moved to the city in 2002, and we know that Sheridan is the greatest place on earth to live. That's why we all live here. I said 4 years ago that we need to make sure that we continue to do the right thing for our community. That's what I do. I stand up for our community. I stand up for our rights as residents. I stand up for our rights as a city. And I stand up for our responsibilities as a community. When we work through these issues and certain comments are made, you have to let that stuff roll off your back, because a lot of that is passion and anger that is out there. It's opinion. It's not necessarily truth. So I always work on truth. I work on integrity. I work on professionalism. I make sure that we do the right thing. My background is a Bachelor of Arts in Police and City Administration, and emphasis on pre-law and computer science. I've got 2 degrees at Sheridan College. I have police officer standards and training. I'm ex-military as well. I know how to protect our community. When groups come through our town, I make sure that our police chief knows that he's backed and he's supported by our political branch, our mayor and our council, that if he needs to make arrests and do the right thing to save our businesses and save our community members and not let things get damaged or broken, he will have the backing of the council and the mayor to make sure that that gets done and done properly. As we work forward over the next 4 years, there's a few projects I really want to get locked into place. The 1135 is going to be finished partly this year, partly next year. We finished the Hillslide project, which is a major project that's been 50 years in the coming, maybe 70. The next phase is that Riverwalk project right downtown. That's something I've been working on for the last 4 years, and I have to continue to work on for the next 4 to 8 years to get that.
We're going to hold you to the 2 minutes. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight who's in the audience. We can't see you because it's dark out there, but thank you for coming. And I'd especially like to thank everybody who's watching live on our YouTube channel. This will also be available for weeks to come leading up to the election for anybody who missed it. So please check the Sheridan Press YouTube channel for screening of this debate moving into the future. Also, please remember that absentee voting has already begun and polls will be open on November 3rd. Thank you all for coming, and good night.